stress is not a modern invention. Long before smartphones, deadlines, traffic jams, and constant notifications, human beings carried the heavy weight of fear, routine, uncertainty, and responsibility. If anything, the stress faced by leaders in the ancient world was even greater. Decisions were not about late emails, but about the survival of entire empires. Imagine ruling over millions of people, knowing that one wrong decision could lead to war, famine, or collapse. This was the daily life of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor often remembered as the philosopher-king. In today's world, we talk about mental health and burnout as though they were new conditions. But Marcus, who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, struggled with the same problems we do. He was not only an emperor, he was also a husband, a father, a general at war, and most importantly, a man who carried the immense burden of stress every single day. And yet, unlike so many powerful figures before and after him, Marcus did not drown in anxiety. He developed a way of thinking that allowed him to carry these burdens with dignity and calmness. His secret? Philosophy of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire from 161 to 180 CE, one of the most challenging periods in its history. He faced endless wars along the empire's borders, outbreaks of deadly plagues that wiped out large portions of the population, and political betrayals within Rome itself. His reign was anything but peaceful, and yet despite the storms outside, Marcus sought peace within himself. He left behind no grand memoirs about his victories, no propaganda carved in stone. Instead, he left us something far more valuable, a collection of personal notes and reflections, later compiled into a book we now call Meditations. These writings were never intended for anyone else's eyes. They were Marcus's private therapy, his way of talking to himself about how to remain calm, rational, and steady in the face of overwhelming stress. The fact that these writings survived is a miracle. For centuries, they have guided leaders, soldiers, writers, and everyday people through their own struggles. Today, when stress and anxiety dominate modern life, Marcus's wisdom is more relevant than ever. When people look for advice on stress management today, they usually turn to psychology books, productivity hacks, or mindfulness training. But the problems Marcus faced were far greater than most of ours, and his solutions were time-tested by fire, war, and death itself. By studying Marcus's methods, we are not only learning about ancient philosophy, we are learning from a man who had every reason to collapse under pressure and yet managed to remain steady. Think about this. He ruled during the Antonine Plague, pandemic that killed millions, including his own soldiers and friends. He spent much of his life on battlefields, sleeping in tents in freezing winters, always under threat of invasion. He endured betrayal, court conspiracies, and even the failure of his own son, Commodus, who would later bring disgrace to the throne. He suffered chronic illness and physical pain, likely making daily life difficult. And yet Marcus did not become bitter, resentful, or tyrannical. Instead, he trained his mind to focus on what he could control, to accept the things he could not, and to live according to reason and virtue. This makes him a perfect guide for us. If Marcus Aurelius could deal with stress in his world of war and plague, then surely we can learn from him to handle our stressful jobs, financial struggles, family issues, and modern anxieties. At the core of Marcus's stress management was Stoicism, a school of philosophy that began in Athens around 300 BCE. The Stoics believed that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. It's a simple but powerful idea shaped Marcus's thinking. When stress arose, he would remind himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Choose not to be harmed on. You won't feel harmed. You don't feel harmed on. You haven't been." These reminders were his shield against the chaos of the world. He used philosophy the way modern people use therapy, not as abstract theory, but as daily medicine for the soul. In our fast-paced, digital, hyper-connected world, stress seems impossible to escape. We check our phones hundreds of times a day, compare our lives to others on social media, chase endless deadlines, and often feel overwhelmed. Unlike Marcus, we may not rule an empire, but we rule our own small kingdoms of responsibilities. families, jobs, relationships, bills, and dreams. This is where Marcus speaks directly to us across centuries. His reflections on stress, responsibility, and inner peace are not just historical curiosities. They are practical tools for us today. By following his example, we can learn too. Recognize what is within our control and what is not. Use journaling as a tool for self-reflection and stress relief. Train our emotions instead of being ruled by them. Accept fate and uncertainty with courage. Live with purpose, even under pressure. This script you are about to hear or read is not just a retelling of Marcus Aurelius's life. It is a deep exploration of how he specifically dealt with stress, what techniques he used, and how those techniques can still help us today. We will examine his philosophy, his personal writings, and the context of his times to uncover practical lessons. Each chapter will dive deeper into a different aspect: his life, his challenges, his philosophy, and how modern readers can apply the same tools. By the end, you will not only know more about Marcus Aurelius, you will have a personal guide for handling stress in your own life. In the next chapters, you will look closely at Marcus's personal struggles as emperor and how he applied Stoicism in real situations. We will examine how journaling helped him calm his mind. You will see how he viewed emotions like anger and fear as dangerous enemies. We will discover how his acceptance of fate allowed him to find peace even in crisis. Finally, we will connect his ancient wisdom to modern practices for stress management. 8. Marcus Aurelius never wrote with the intention of becoming famous or influencing millions of people. His notes and meditations were humble reminders to himself, scribbled while he sat in a military camp or a palace chamber. Yet, centuries later, those simple reminders serve as a beacon of wisdom. Stress will never disappear from our lives, but perhaps Marcus Aurelius can teach us that we do not need to be controlled by it. If a man who carried the weight of an empire could find calm, then surely we can find calm in our own daily struggles. This is why Marcus Aurelius still matters. His philosophy is not a relic of the past. It is a living guide for the present. When we think of emperors, we often imagine luxury golden palaces, endless banquets, and a life free from hardship. But for Marcus Aurelius, the crown was not a reward. It was a heavy burden. He inherited an empire that was vast, powerful, and admired, but also deeply unstable. The borders were constantly under attack. The treasury was strained, and disease swept through cities and armies alike. To be emperor was not to live in comfort. It was to live under constant pressure. Marcus himself once wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live according to nature." This was not a casual reflection. It was a reminder to himself that ruling Rome meant living in constant awareness of mortality, stress, and the fragile nature of life. Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 CE into a noble Roman family. Unlike many of his peers, Marcus was not raised in luxury, but in discipline. Even as a child, he showed signs of seriousness and a love for philosophy. He wore simple clothing, avoided excess, and trained his mind in self-control. By the time he was a teenager, he had already been drawn to Stoicism. His tutors taught him that virtue mattered more than wealth, that wisdom was greater than power, and that a ruler should live for the good of others, not for himself. These lessons would shape him for the rest of his life. But Marcus did not remain a student of philosophy alone. He was adopted by Emperor Antoninus Pius, who made Marcus his heir. Suddenly, the quiet young philosopher was forced to prepare for the heaviest responsibility in the world, ruling the greatest empire of the time. When Marcus became emperor in 161 CE, he did not inherit peace. Almost immediately, the Roman Empire was tested by three overwhelming crises. The Parthian War. Rome's eastern neighbor challenged its borders, forcing Marcus to send armies to defend the empire. The Antonine Plague, a devastating epidemic, possibly smallpox, spread through the empire, killing millions of citizens and soldiers. The Germanic Wars. Tribes from the north pressed against Rome's borders, launching invasions that Marcus himself had to fight in person. These crises lasted nearly his entire reign. Instead of spending his life in Rome's palaces, Marcus spent years in military camps, sleeping on rough ground, enduring cold winters, writing his reflections at night by lamplight. His famous meditations were not written in comfort, but in the chaos of war. Imagine the stress of Marcus's position. Every decision meant life or death for thousands. He had to balance the needs of the army, the Senate, and the people. He knew that even his closest allies could betray him for power. He had to rule with wisdom while being constantly exhausted by war and illness. And yet Marcus trained himself to respond not with anger or despair, but with calm discipline, he reminded himself. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. For Marcus's stress was not about the world, it was about perception. His task as emperor was not to control fate, but to control himself. As if ruling Rome were not enough, Marcus also faced personal tragedies. Several of his children died young, leaving him with grief that any parent would struggle to bear. His only surviving son, Commodus, would later bring shame to the throne, undoing much of Marcus's careful work. His marriage to Faustina was filled with both loyalty and controversy. Ancient sources accuse her of infidelity, though Marcus never once wrote against her. Instead, he remained faithful and loving, showing remarkable patience even in his personal life. His health was another challenge. Marcus suffered from chronic illnesses, likely stomach or chest problems, which made his stressful duties even harder. Imagine ruling an empire while enduring constant physical pain. It is during these times of immense pressure that Marcus turned to writing. His meditations were his private therapy written only for himself. They reveal not a perfect man, but a man struggling, reminding himself to be calm, rational, and virtuous. Some entries show his exhaustion. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of? If I am going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do. This was not motivational speaking to others. It was Marcus trying to convince himself to keep going. Day after day, under unbearable stress. Despite the weight he carried, Marcus never gave in to tyranny or cruelty. Unlike many emperors before him, he did not indulge in excess, corruption, or violence for its own sake. Instead, he led by example. He lived modestly, treated others with respect, and made decisions with reason rather than impulse. The soldiers admired him because he shared their hardships. The people respected him because he sought justice. Philosophers honored him because he embodied their teachings. In every sense, Marcus Aurelius was not just a ruler of Rome, but a ruler of himself. It is easy to think of Marcus Aurelius as a near-perfect figure, but he was human. He admitted his flaws, his anger, his sadness, and his weakness. He knew he was not above stress. Instead, he sought to transform it. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This was not arrogance, but humility. He recognized that he could not stop war, plague, or death, but he could stop himself from being destroyed by them internally. Marcus's life teaches us that stress does not disappear with wealth, power, or status. If even the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world, felt crushed by stress, then stress is part of the human condition. But his example also teaches us that stress can be managed, transformed, and even used as a tool for personal growth. His life shows us that responsibility and stress go hand in hand, that true leadership means mastering oneself first, that philosophy, not wealth or power, is the best shield against anxiety. Marcus's life teaches us that stress does not disappear with wealth, power, or status. If even the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world, felt crushed by stress, then stress is part of the human condition. But his example also teaches us that stress can be managed, transformed, and even used as a tool for personal growth. His life shows us that responsibility and stress go hand in hand. That true leadership means mastering oneself first. That philosophy, not wealth or power, is the best shield against anxiety. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire that stretched from the deserts of Egypt to the hills of Britain, from the Atlantic Ocean to the frontiers of Persia. On maps, Rome looked invincible, a vast sea of Roman red covering half the known world. But beneath this image of strength, the empire was fragile. Borders were long and exposed. The population was diverse, and restless. And external enemies, Parthians in the east, Germanic tribes in the north, nomadic raiders along the frontiers, constantly tested Rome's defenses. Unlike earlier emperors who enjoyed long periods of peace, Marcus inherited a storm. His reign, beginning in 161 CE, quickly became a test of survival for the Roman state. If we want to understand his stress, we must understand the world he lived in, a world of war, plague, and political chaos. The first great crisis of Marcus's reign came almost immediately. In the east, the Parthian Empire, Rome's powerful rival, launched an invasion into Armenia and Syria. Rome could not ignore this challenge. To lose control of the east would mean losing trade, prestige, and influence across the Mediterranean. Marcus, though new to power, responded with calm decisiveness. He delegated the campaign to his co-emperor, Lucius Verus, while he remained in Rome to manage affairs. The war dragged on for years, exhausting resources and lives. Though Rome eventually triumphed and pushed the Parthians back, the victory came at a terrible cost. Soldiers returning from the war carried with them an invisible enemy disease. What became known as the Antonine Plague was one of the deadliest pandemics in ancient history. Likely smallpox or measles, it spread rapidly through Rome's trade networks and military camps. It did not discriminate between soldier and citizen, rich and poor, ruler and ruled. The effects were catastrophic. Millions of Romans died, perhaps up to 10% of the empire's population. Whole villages were wiped out, cities depopulated. The Roman army, already stretched thin, was crippled by illness. Economic life slowed as trade and agriculture collapsed. Imagine being emperor during this crisis. Every day, Marcus received news of thousands dying. His own soldiers, those he depended on for defense, were falling ill. Religious panic swept through the empire as people sought scapegoats, sacrifices, and omens. For Marcus, this was not just a public health disaster, it was a spiritual test. In his meditations, he reminds himself, "Death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back." This was not indifference, it was preparation. Marcus had to teach himself to remain calm, while death walked in every street of his empire. While the plague weakened Rome, another threat struck from the north. Germanic tribes, sensing Roman weakness, began invading across the Danube frontier. They raided towns, burned farms, and killed Roman citizens. For Rome, these invasions were not just border skirmishes, they threatened the very heart of the empire. Marcus could not remain in Rome. He took personal command of the legions, leading them into brutal campaigns in freezing winters and harsh forests. For years, he lived not in marble palaces, but in wooden camps, writing his meditations by lamplight after days of battle. The stress was immense. Not only was he emperor responsible for the administration of a vast empire, he was also general, leading armies through exhausting wars. He could not delegate this duty. To save Rome, Marcus had to be present. His soldiers respected him because he endured their hardships, but the cost to his health and peace of mind was enormous. As if war and plague were not enough, Marcus also had to manage the politics of Rome. The Senate, though weakened, still demanded attention and appeasement. Ambitious generals and governors could betray him at any moment. Even within his family, betrayal lurked. The Roman political system was built on fragile balances of power. An emperor had to appear strong, or rivals would exploit weakness. Yet Marcus, true to his Stoic nature, avoided cruelty and paranoia, preferred reason, patience, and persuasion. But this choice often meant more stress, because he bore insults and opposition that other emperors would have crushed with violence. His greatest political sorrow came from his own son, Commodus. Marcus had hoped to leave Rome in the hands of a wise successor, but Commodus proved selfish, corrupt, and reckless. Though this became fully clear only after Marcus's death, even during his life he must have sensed the danger of passing Rome to an unworthy heir. To truly grasp Marcus's stress, picture daily life in his empire. Reports of villages destroyed on the frontiers. Letters about governors mishandling provinces. Endless petitions from senators and citizens demanding favors. News of famine caused by disrupted agriculture. Bodies being buried every day in the plague-stricken streets of Rome. His own declining health, worsened by age and overwork. And yet, through all of this, Marcus maintained discipline. He wrote reminders to himself. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. He could not stop the plague. He could not end the wars overnight. He could not cure betrayal. But he could control his response. For Marcus, the chaos of his world was not unique. He believed that history always repeats itself. Wars, plagues, betrayals, and deaths are part of the human condition. The wise man does not expect life to be free from crisis. Instead, he expects hardship and trains himself to endure it. In the Meditations, Marcus tells himself, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." This was the essence of his survival. Could not stop the changes, the wars, the plagues, the political turmoil, but he could shape his own mind, could remain calm, rational, and virtuous, even when the world burned. Why should we study Marcus's world of war, plague, and chaos? Because it mirrors our own. We face pandemics, political instability, economic collapse, and constant stress. The details are different, but the essence is the same. Marcus's world was uncertain, and so is ours. His calm, therefore, is not just ancient wisdom, is a living example for us today. He shows us that stress is not caused by events themselves, but by our expectations. If we expect life to be easy, stress will crush us. If we accept that life is filled with hardship, we will meet stress with strength. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world constantly on the edge of collapse. War, plague, and political chaos defined his reign. Yet through it all, he remained calm, rational, and faithful to his Stoic principles. His example proves that true power lies not in controlling the world, but in controlling oneself. When we face our own crisis, whether pandemics, political turmoil, or personal struggles, we can look to Marcus and say, if he could endure the weight of an empire, surely we can endure the trials of our own lives. To be emperor of Rome was to carry the weight of the world. Unlike a modern politician, Marcus Aurelius was not just a symbolic leader. He was the supreme commander of the military, the final judge of law, the ultimate authority over life and death. Every decision he made rippled across millions of lives. A single mistake could destroy provinces, armies, or even the empire itself. Marcus did not seek this power. From his youth, he had been drawn not to politics, but to philosophy. He loved study, contemplation, and writing, yet destiny placed the crown on his head. He accepted it not with joy, but with a sense of duty, he wrote in his Meditations. Take on the burden of your task with respect, with dignity, with humanity, with patience, with justice, and never let it go. The stress of Marcus's life can be traced to three roots: the immense power he held, the crushing responsibility he bore, and the constant awareness of mortality. To outsiders, Marcus's position must have seemed enviable. He commanded armies, wealth, and authority. But for him, power was not a gift, it was a trap. He knew that absolute power had destroyed countless emperors before him. He often reminded himself of the dangers of power. It corrupts those who pursue it for its own sake. It blinds rulers to wisdom and virtue. It isolates, leaving emperors surrounded by flatterers instead of truth-tellers. Marcus feared becoming a tyrant. He'd seen emperors like Caligula and Nero who indulged in cruelty and excess, and he vowed never to follow their path. But resisting this temptation was exhausting. Every day he had to monitor not only the empire but his own soul. He wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions." For Marcus, the stress of power came not from enjoying it, but from resisting its dangers. His fight was not only against Rome's enemies, but against the corruption of his own heart. Marcus Aurelius was not simply a man. He was the center of an empire. Every decision he made could mean life or death for thousands. When plague struck, he had to decide how to allocate scarce resources. When war raged, he had to determine where to send legions. When famine loomed, he had to manage grain supplies. Imagine the stress of this responsibility, knowing that a failed harvest could lead to starvation in entire provinces, knowing that a poor military decision could lose Rome's borders, knowing that justice in the courts depended on his final word. In his Meditations, Marcus constantly reminded himself to focus not on personal comfort, but on service. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. His stress was not just external, it was internal. He demanded perfection of himself, to live up to the ideal of the philosopher-king. The final root of Marcus's stress was mortality. The world he lived in was harsh. Plague, war, and treachery surrounded him. He lost children to illness, saw friends and soldiers die. He himself suffered from chronic sickness. For Marcus, death was never far away. Instead of denying it, he faced it directly. In his writings, he constantly meditated on mortality. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. By reflecting on death, Marcus sought not to despair, but to gain perspective. If life is short, then stress over wealth, fame, or power is meaningless. Only virtue matters. Yet this philosophy was not always easy to practice. In private, Marcus struggled. His reminders about death were not evidence of coldness, but of a man wrestling with fear. Writing about mortality was his way of calming himself. Perhaps the greatest source of stress for Marcus was the tension between his Stoic ideals and the brutal reality of ruling. Philosophy taught him to live simply, avoid cruelty, and remain detached. But as emperor, he had to wage wars, execute traitors, and enforce discipline. He longed to be a philosopher, but was forced to be a soldier and judge. He wrote, "I am a man who loves philosophy, but the duties of a ruler keep me from it." The stress of this contradiction wore on him. He could not escape the throne, nor abandon his principles. His life became a balancing act between the wisdom of the Stoics and the demands of empire. Another often overlooked root of his stress was loneliness, or isolates. Marcus could trust very few people. Many sought his favor for personal gain. Others plotted against him. Even within his family, he faced betrayal and disappointment. Philosophy became his only true companion. The meditations were written not for others, but for himself. They were conversations with his own soul, because no one else could fully share his burden. His solitude was not physical. He was always surrounded by advisors and soldiers, but spiritual. No one else carried the same weight. What makes Marcus so relatable is that we can read his private struggle. His meditations reveal a man speaking to himself in the quiet hours, reminding himself to stay strong. Here are glimpses of his inner dialogue. Against anger, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Against despair, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Against self-indulgence, do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others, unless it benefits the common good. These were not abstract teachings. They were weapons against his own stress. From Marcus's struggles, we learn several lessons. Power does not remove. Stress, it multiplies it. Even emperors feel crushed by responsibility. Responsibility requires strength of character. Marcus endured stress by reminding himself that his role was service, not privilege. Mortality puts stress in perspective. By remembering that life is short, Marcus found clarity about what truly matters. The roots of Marcus Aurelius's stress, power, responsibility, and mortality were immense. Few humans in history have carried such a burden, and yet instead of collapsing under it, he transformed it into wisdom. His writings are not the voice of a perfect man, but of a struggling one, teaching himself to endure. This is why Marcus's legacy endures. It shows us that stress is not something to eliminate, but something to understand, accept, and master. He carried the weight of the empire, and still he remained human. For Marcus Aurelius's philosophy was not an academic pursuit or a pastime for idle speculation. It was a medicine, a treatment for the ailments of the mind. He approached philosophy the way a physician approaches disease, carefully, systematically, and with an eye toward healing. In the turmoil of Roman life, wars, betrayals, epidemics, he did not have the luxury of abstract theories. He needed something practical, something that could soothe fear, control anger, and bring clarity in the midst of chaos. Stoicism gave him that. The Stoics believed that philosophy should be lived, not merely studied. As Epictetus taught, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Marcus took this to heart. His meditations are not polished arguments but personal exercises, written as reminders to himself. Every line was a prescription for his own mental health. The foundation of Stoicism is the idea that one must live in harmony with nature, not the external environment alone, but human nature itself. For the Stoics, the universe was rational, ordered, and governed by reason logos. Humanity, as part of this cosmos, must align itself with this rational order. Marcus often reminded himself, always think of the universe as one living being, with one body and one soul. If everything is interconnected, then nothing happens without cause. Even suffering has its place. To resist it is like resisting the tide of the ocean. This worldview became his medicine against despair. When plague or war struck, he could say, "This is natural. It is part of the whole. It is not an enemy, but a piece of the universe to which I also belong." One of the most healing aspects of Stoicism is the distinction between what lies within our control and what does not. Within control, our judgments, choices, desires, and actions. Beyond control, our health, reputation, wealth, the actions of others, and ultimately life and death. This principle freed Marcus from the paralysis of stress. As emperor, he could not stop wars, disease, or betrayal, but he could control his own response. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This teaching is as relevant today as it was in the 2nd century. Much of modern stress comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. The Stoic medicine is to shift focus. Stop wrestling with what cannot be changed, and invest energy only in what lies within reach. Another cornerstone of Stoic therapy was the belief that only virtue wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline is truly good. Wealth, fame, power, and even health are indifferents. They may be preferred, but they do not determine happiness. For Marcus, this teaching was liberating. Surrounded by wealth and power, he constantly reminded himself that these were empty. A man's worth is measured by the things he pursues. This shift in values healed him from the stress of worldly attachments. If an emperor could lose everything, armies, fortune, even life, and still remain happy by holding on to virtue, then so too could any person. Stoicism was not simply a worldview, but a set of practices. Marcus treated these practices as mental medicine he had to take daily. Morning reflection, reminding himself that he would meet selfish, arrogant, or ungrateful people and preparing to respond with patience. Negative visualization, imagining the loss of loved ones, health, or life itself, to cultivate gratitude for what remained. View from above, picturing himself from a cosmic perspective, shrinking human troubles to their true scale. Evening review, examining his actions at the end of the day. Where did I act in accordance with virtue, and where did I fail? These exercises were psychological armor. Just as a soldier maintains his weapons, Marcus maintained his mind. Two of the greatest sources of stress for Marcus were anger and fear. Stoicism offered him antidotes for both. Against anger, Marcus reminded himself that others act from ignorance. If someone wronged him, it was not malice, but misunderstanding. Whenever you are offended at someone's fault, turn to yourself and consider your own failings. This medicine cooled the fires of rage. Against fear, the Stoics taught that fear arises from imagining the future as unbearable. But if one focuses only on the present moment, nothing is unbearable. Marcus wrote, "Do not let your thoughts wander into what may happen tomorrow. The present moment is enough." Through these reminders, Marcus calmed his emotions. Philosophy was not about suppressing feelings, but about healing the mind from destructive illusions. Though Marcus was emperor, Stoic philosophy was not exclusive to the elite. Epictetus, one of Marcus's main inspirations, had been a slave. Seneca, another Stoic, was a statesman and playwright. The universality of Stoicism was part of its power. The same medicine that healed a slave's bitterness could heal an emperor's burden. Both faced loss, pain, and death. Both could learn to live in virtue and equanimity. Philosophy was not about social rank, but about human nature itself. For Marcus, philosophy was a guide through life's chaos. It was like a physician standing beside him, reminding him what to eat and what to avoid, what to fear and what to embrace. In his writings, he sometimes addressed philosophy almost as a person, thanking it for saving him. He wrote, "Let philosophy be your steady companion, as you do your work, and as you rest, and as you live, and as you die." Without this medicine, Marcus might have been crushed by his burdens. With it, he endured. What makes Marcus so enduring is that his medicine resembles modern psychology. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, one of the most effective modern therapies, is rooted in Stoic principles. The Stoic idea of separating judgments from events is nearly identical to CBT's practice of challenging irrational thoughts. Marcus told himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." He was practicing what modern psychology now prescribes. His philosophy was therapy 1,800 years before psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius's stress was immense, but philosophy served as his physician. Stoicism gave him tools to separate what he could control from what he could not, to value virtue above wealth, to prepare for loss without despair, and to face death with calm. He did not merely study Stoicism, he lived it as medicine for his soul. And because he applied it daily, he was able to remain not just emperor of Rome, but master of himself. This is why, even today, his meditations feel like a prescription written across time, practical, healing, and deeply human. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet when he turned inward, he did not seek flattery, counsel, or luxury to ease his burden. He picked up a pen. His meditations are not speeches, not decrees, not propaganda. They are a private journal. It's written in Greek, not Latin, and never intended for publication. These notes were raw, personal, and therapeutic. This practiced daily journaling became one of Marcus's most powerful coping strategies. Each entry is a glimpse into a mind wrestling with power, stress, and mortality. By writing, Marcus turned philosophy into something alive. His journal was not just a record, it was a medicine chest. Journaling gave Marcus something no court advisor or senator could: honesty. He could not always admit weakness in public, but on the page, he could. There he questioned himself, chastised himself, and reminded himself of Stoic truths. For example, when overwhelmed by frustration with others, he wrote, "Say to yourself in the morning, 'Today I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But they are like this because they cannot tell good from evil.' This was not meant for others. It was a self-reminder." His journal was a mirror place to catch his own distortions and correct them. Writing helped him externalize his thoughts, examine them, and apply Stoic reasoning to heal them. Marcus did not treat Stoicism as theory. His journal shows him practicing philosophy like a musician rehearses scales. Each line is repetition, reminders of impermanence, of self-control, of the insignificance of fame and wealth. He wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." This was not a polished essay. It was practice. By writing, he was training his mind to think in Stoic patterns. Journaling was a gymnasium for his soul. Marcus did not treat Stoicism as theory. His journal shows him practicing philosophy like a musician rehearses scales. Each line is repetition, reminders of impermanence, of self-control, of the insignificance of fame and wealth. He wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you while you live, while it is in your power. Be good." This was not a polished essay. It was practice. By writing, he was training his mind to think in Stoic patterns. Journaling was a gymnasium for his soul. What strikes modern readers of the Meditations is its fragmented, repetitive style. Many passages say the same thing in slightly different ways. Life is short. Death comes to all. Do not be angry at others. This repetition was not lack of creativity. It was therapy. Just as someone under stress might repeat a calming phrase, Marcus repeated Stoic truths to anchor himself. His entries were mantras, written to reprogram the mind against panic and despair. The shortness of the entries also reflects his reality. He wrote, not in leisure, but in stolen moments in military campaigns, intense, late at night. Each sentence had to be sharp, direct, medicinal. One of Marcus's greatest fears was being corrupted by power. His journal became a weapon against pride. Again and again he wrote reminders of his own mortality. Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died, and the same thing happened to both. All is fleeting. Fame, power, wealth, only virtue remains. By writing these lines, Marcus stripped away illusions of grandeur. Even as emperor, he used the page to humble himself. Without journaling, pride could have poisoned him. With it, he kept perspective. A constant theme in the Meditations is death. To a modern reader, the repetition may feel grim, but for Marcus, it was liberating. By writing often about mortality, he reduced its sting. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death is at hand. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. Writing these reminders helped him cope with fear. By rehearsing death on the page, he prepared for it in life. His journal was not an obsession with death, but a tool to appreciate life more deeply. Journaling also helped Marcus think through leadership challenges. When generals betrayed him, when senators resisted him, when soldiers demanded discipline, he processed his frustrations through writing. For example, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. This was not just philosophy, it was leadership. By reminding himself to act with justice instead of cruelty, he ensured Rome's throne did not corrupt his humanity. His writing shaped the way he ruled. Though deeply rational, Marcus's journaling often takes on a spiritual tone. He frequently writes about the divine order of the cosmos, the rationality of nature, and his place within it. For Marcus, writing was prayer not to gods for favors, but to reason itself. When he wrote about aligning with nature, he was reminding himself of his duty to live in harmony with the universe. His journal was a spiritual anchor in turbulent seas. Today, psychologists encourage journaling for stress relief, emotional clarity, and resilience. What Marcus practiced out of necessity, modern science now validates. Writing externalizes worries, reducing mental clutter. Repetition of affirmations strengthens neural pathways. Reflective writing increases emotional regulation. Marcus was, in a sense, one of history's earliest practitioners of therapeutic journaling. His meditations are a timeless example of how writing can help anyone, not just emperors, cope with life's chaos. Marcus Aurelius's journal was his sanctuary. In its pages, he faced his fears, calmed his anger, checked his pride, rehearsed his philosophy, and prepared himself for death. He did not write for history, yet his private therapy became one of the greatest works of philosophy ever written. His journaling shows that even in the seat of ultimate power, the greatest struggle is not with armies or senators, but with the mind itself. Through writing, Marcus won that battle again, and again, line by line. Marcus Aurelius may have commanded vast armies and presided over the Roman Empire. But his greatest enemies were not Parthian soldiers or Germanic tribes, they were his own emotions. Anger at betrayal, fear of plague, anxiety about death, and responsibility. These inner foes were constant, and he fought them not with legions, but with philosophy. In his meditations, Marcus often sounds like a man talking himself down from an emotional storm. His words reveal a lifelong struggle to keep his feelings in check, to maintain calm in the face of unbearable pressure. Stoicism provided him the weapons for this inner war. Anger was one of Marcus's chief concerns. As emperor, he had immense power to punish. A flash of rage could mean death for thousands. He knew this, which is why he reminded himself repeatedly. Anger is a weakness, not a strength, he wrote. How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? The Stoics taught that anger clouds reason, and for Marcus's reason was the essence of human dignity. By writing against anger, he was disciplining himself to pause before reacting. He treated anger as a disease of the mind, a fever that needed cooling. Practical strategies Marcus used against anger: perspective taking, remind yourself that others act from ignorance, not malice. Self-reflection, ask, am I guilty of similar faults? Impermanence? Remember that both the insult and the insulter will soon be gone. These reflections transformed anger from a raging fire into a manageable spark. Fear haunted Marcus's reign. He faced the Antonine Plague, which killed millions, including perhaps his co-emperor and even his children. He fought endless wars with uncertain outcomes. He lived under the constant threat of assassination. Yet his writings show a deliberate campaign against fear. He repeatedly told himself that fear comes not from events but from judgments. The plague, the battlefield, the dagger and the dark thieves are outside events. What makes them terrifying is how we interpret them. he wrote. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. By reframing fear, Marcus regained control. Death was not an evil, but a natural process. Misfortune was not punishment, but part of the universal order. Fear dissolved when he aligned his mind with nature. Unlike fear, which looks at immediate threats, anxiety gnaws at the future. Marcus bore the crushing weight of responsibility for Rome, its armies, its politics, its citizens. Anxiety could easily have paralyzed him. He fought back with the Stoic discipline of focusing only on the present moment. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason that today arm you against the present. This was Marcus's way of reminding himself that worry is wasted energy. The future cannot be controlled, only prepared for. By returning his mind to the present, he disarmed anxiety. Marcus's meditations show him applying specific Stoic tools to control emotions, the view from above, imagining life from a cosmic perspective, seeing all human struggles as small and fleeting. Negative visualization, rehearsing worst-case scenarios so they lose their sting. Acceptance of fate, amor fati, embracing events as natural, even when painful. Virtue as the highest good, focusing not on outcomes, but on acting with justice, courage, and wisdom in every moment. These tools formed a psychological toolkit, helping Marcus treat emotions not as uncontrollable forces, but as thoughts that could be examined, understood, and calmed. Yet Marcus was not a stone statue of Stoicism. His writings reveal slips moments where anger or despair returned. He often repeats the same lessons, showing that control was a daily battle, not a permanent victory. This humanity makes him relatable. He was not perfect, he was practicing. Every time he picked up his pen to write about patience, courage, or calm, he was retraining himself. Just as a soldier trains before battle, Marcus's emotional struggles mirror our own. Today we may not rule an empire, but we face constant stress. Workplace frustrations, fears of illness, anxieties about the future. Like Marcus, we cannot eliminate emotions entirely, but we can learn to manage them. His teachings offer practical modern lessons. Pause before reacting in anger. Reframe fear as a mental construction. Stop feeding anxiety with future worries. Stay grounded in the present. These lessons, simple yet profound, are as relevant today as they were in the 2nd century. Marcus Aurelius's greatness was not that he never felt anger, fear, or anxiety, was that he refused to be ruled by them. With philosophy as his shield, he trained himself to meet emotions with patience, clarity, and reason. For him, true power was not control over Rome, but control over himself. And that is why his words still resonate, because they show that even the most powerful man in the world was fighting the same inner battles we face today, and that with discipline and wisdom, those battles can be won. To the Stoics, fate was not a cruel tyrant or a mystical force, it was the rational order of the universe. They believed everything happens according to logos, the divine reason that governs all things. Nothing is random. Every event, whether joyous or tragic, fits into a cosmic pattern beyond our immediate understanding. Marcus Aurelius embraced this vision. As emperor, he saw famine, war, betrayal, and plague. Instead of raging against fate, he reminded himself that these were not accidents. They were threads in a larger tapestry. Whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time. This belief did not make him passive. Instead, it gave him peace. By accepting that much of life is beyond control, Marcus freed himself from endless frustration. At first glance, Stoicism seems fatalistic. If everything is determined, where is human freedom? The Stoics answered this by distinguishing events from responses. Events, illness, loss, insults, natural disasters, death, these are not in our control. Responses, our judgments, actions, and attitudes, these are fully within our control. Marcus often reminded himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the heart of Stoic freedom. Though fate decides what happens, we decide how to meet it. In this balance, fate provides the stage, but we choose how to act our role. For Marcus, it was not enough to endure fate, he sought to love it. This idea, later called amor fati, love of fate, means embracing every event as if you had chosen it yourself, he wrote. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. Fate throws hardships, but the Stoic turns them into fuel for virtue. Pain becomes an opportunity for courage. Insult becomes a chance for patience. Loss becomes a lesson in gratitude. By loving fate, Marcus turned obstacles into growth. No theme recurs in the Meditations more than death. For Marcus, accepting mortality was the final measure of Stoic strength. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Death is not an interruption of life, but its natural conclusion. Just as apples fall when ripe, so too do humans. By accepting death, Marcus dissolved much of life's fear and urgency. To reject fate is to live in anxiety. To accept it is to live in peace. For a ruler, fate was particularly pressing. Marcus could not prevent famine, disease, or betrayal, but he could act justly within those constraints. His acceptance of fate kept him steady when others panicked. When plague struck Rome, some emperors might have raged against the gods or sought scapegoats. Marcus instead faced the reality calmly. He allocated resources, supported the army, and reminded himself that this suffering was part of the universal order. His composure came not from indifference, but from his stoic trust in fate. Accepting fate is not resignation, it is psychological healing. Much human stress arises from demanding that the universe obey our desires. We resist illness, resist loss, resist change, resist death. Stoicism prescribes a cure. Align your will with reality, Marcus wrote. Do not seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. By shifting perspective, suffering softens. What once felt like punishment becomes part of a larger harmony. Today, people often resist the word fate, preferring ideas of choice and control. Yet modern science, like Stoicism, reminds us of our limits. We cannot control genetics, natural disasters, or mortality. What remains in our hands is how we respond. In a sense, Marcus was practicing what psychologists now call radical acceptance, acknowledging reality as it is, without judgment, and finding freedom in that acceptance. For Marcus Aurelius, fate was not an enemy, but a companion. It shaped the stage of his life, and his duty was to play his role with virtue. To resist fate was futile. To accept it was wisdom. To love it was greatness. His writings remind us that peace does not come from bending reality to our will, but from aligning our will with reality. In every loss, every hardship, every end, Marcus found not despair but harmony. He did not merely endure fate, he embraced it. For Marcus Aurelius' Stoicism was not abstract philosophied, it was a daily discipline. As Emperor of Rome, he could not afford long retreats or endless study. Instead, he turned Stoicism into short, powerful exercises to strengthen his mind, steady his emotions, and preserve calm in the face of chaos. These exercises were his mental armor. Like a soldier sharpening his sword, Marcus sharpened his character each day. His meditations reveal how he rehearsed these practices constantly, turning philosophy into action. Marcus began each day by setting his mindset. One of his most famous notes reads, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This was not cynicism, but preparation. By expecting difficulties, Marcus protected himself from disappointment. Instead of being shocked when people acted poorly, he reminded himself that such behavior was part of human nature. His task was not to be frustrated, but to act justly regardless. Modern parallel. Psychologists call this mental contrasting, anticipating obstacles while affirming your ability to endure them. At night, Marcus practiced reflection. He asked, "Did I act with justice? Did I control my anger? Did I let fear or desire master me? Did I waste time on trivial matters?" This habit echoes the Stoic practice of self-audit, also taught by Seneca and Epictetus. It turned philosophy into feedback, helping Marcus refine his character day by day. Today, journaling or reviewing one's actions before sleep serves the same role, quietly holding ourselves accountable. The meditations themselves were Marcus's exercise in self-dialogue. He wrote not for an audience, but for himself. Writing was therapy. It clarified thoughts, soothed emotions, and reminded him of principles. He often wrote lines like, "You are distressed by external things, but they have no power over you. Only your judgments matter." By repeating such truths on paper, Marcus reinforced them in his mind. Each page of his journal was a practice in cognitive reframing, reshaping his thoughts to match Stoic wisdom. When stress overwhelmed him, Marcus practiced what modern Stoics call the view from above. He imagined rising beyond himself. First, above Rome, then above the empire, then above the earth. From that cosmic height, individual worries shrank. Insults, politics, and fears seemed trivial compared to the vastness of the universe. He wrote, "Look at the immensity of time behind you and to the infinity ahead. In this perspective, what is your life? A point, a moment, a vanishing." This exercise dissolved ego and gave him serenity. Marcus frequently reminded himself of death. Far from depressing, this exercise made him urgent and grateful. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." By meditating on mortality, he reduced fear and cherished each day. This exercise gave him calm because nothing loss, insult, failure was ultimate. Death equalized all things. Modern parallel. Mindfulness practices often ask us to contemplate impermanence. Another Stoic tool Marcus used was premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. He imagined losing wealth, status, health, or even loved ones. Why would he do this? Not to cause sorrow, but to lessen shock. By imagining loss, he prepared his mind to endure it with composure. Instead of clinging tightly, he learned to hold life lightly, with gratitude, but without desperation. He wrote, "Do not act as if you had 1,000 years to live. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." Marcus constantly brought himself back to the now. He warned against being consumed by regret of the past or anxiety for the future. Confine yourself to the present. This Stoic mindfulness resembles modern meditation. By focusing on the task before him, judging fairly, commanding wisely, acting with courage, he freed himself from distractions. For an emperor surrounded by crises, this practice was essential. Marcus believed calm came not from grand gestures, but from ordinary discipline, meeting rudeness with patience, performing duties without complaint, eating simply, listening more than speaking. Every small action was training. His philosophy was not for books, but for breakfast tables, courtrooms, and battlefields. Though Emperor Marcus lived simply, he avoided luxury, reminding himself that comfort makes the mind weak. He practiced sleeping on hard beds, eating modestly, and enduring cold and fatigue. This was not asceticism, but preparation. By toughening the body, he trained the mind to remain calm under hardship. Marcus did not pray for events to change. Instead, like Epictetus, he prayed for strength to meet events well. His form of prayer was philosophical meditation, not "make this go away," but "help me meet this with justice." Not "spare me pain," but "let me use pain as training." This practice built resilience without dependence on external outcomes. These daily practices were not magic, they were mental conditioning. Just as soldiers drill so they do not panic in battle, Marcus drilled his mind so it did not collapse under stress. Morning reflection guarded against surprise. Evening review sharpened self-awareness. Journaling reinforced truth. View from above dissolved ego. Memento mori gave urgency. Negative visualization built resilience. Mindfulness anchored him in the present. Physical simplicity toughened his will. Together, they created calm in the chaos of empire. Today, these exercises remain powerful. Write a morning reminder of challenges you'll face. Keep a nightly journal. Meditate on mortality to reduce fear. Imagine setbacks to prepare calmly. Zoom out and see your problems in cosmic perspective. Practice mindfulness at work and home. Train yourself with voluntary simplicity. These are not only Marcus's tools, they are timeless strategies for mental resilience. Marcus Aurelius did not remain calm by nature, he trained for it daily. His calm was the product of habit, reflection, and constant practice. By repeating these Stoic exercises, He built an inner fortress no plague, betrayal, or death could topple. His example shows us that calm is not a gift, it is a discipline cultivated through daily choices. As Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Stress is not new, though we often imagine the modern world with deadlines, bills, social media, and traffic is uniquely stressful. Marcus Aurelius faced pressures just as overwhelming, if not more. He ruled an empire of 60 million people. He faced constant wars on the frontiers. He endured a devastating plague that killed millions, suffered betrayal by friends and family. He dealt with his own fragile health and the deaths of his children. Yet despite these crushing burdens, Marcus cultivated calm. His meditations reveal that stress is not about the weight of circumstances, but about how the mind responds. A key Stoic insight: stress is not caused by events but by our judgments about them, Marcus wrote. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. This means that stress is not automatic. It depends on how we interpret reality. Two people can face the same challenge. One panics, the other remains steady. The difference lies in mindset. Modern psychology echoes this. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, inspired by Stoicism, teaches us to reframe our thoughts to reduce distress. 1. Morning preparation. Expect the difficult before beginning the day. Marcus reminded himself that people would be rude, selfish, or dishonest. By expecting difficulty, he wasn't caught off guard. Modern application. Before work, tell yourself, there will be delays. Rude emails, traffic, unexpected problems, but I will remain steady. Marcus constantly divided life into two categories: what is in our power, our actions, our thoughts. What is beyond our power, fate, other people, outcomes. This separation is the cornerstone of Stoic calm. Why exhaust yourself fighting what you cannot change? Modern application. Don't waste energy worrying about traffic, politics, or gossip. Redirect that energy toward what you can do: your effort, your choices, your character. Marcus trained himself to slow down, to insert reason before emotion. Stress often spikes because we react instantly with anger, fear, or panic. Modern application: when frustrated, breathe, count to 10. Ask, is this worth losing my peace? Delaying reaction weakens the power of stress. Marcus imagined zooming out, seeing himself roam and the whole earth from a cosmic height. From that vast view, insults and anxieties shrink. Modern application. If a coworker embarrasses you or a deadline feels overwhelming, step back. In a year, will this matter? In a century, will anyone remember? Perspective shrinks stress. Marcus reminded himself daily, life is short. Instead of causing despair, this sharpened his focus. Modern application. When stressed, ask, if this were my last day, is this worth my worry? Or should I spend my energy on what matters? Kindness, work, love, gratitude. Marcus often imagined worst-case scenarios, not to dwell in fear, but to reduce shock if they came true. Modern application. Before a meeting, imagine rejection. Before travel, imagine delays. By rehearsing difficulties, you soften their sting and build resilience. At night, Marcus reviewed his actions. Did he live according to virtue? Did he lose control of his emotions? Each day was a lesson, not a failure. Modern application. Instead of replaying stressful moments in guilt, write them down, learn, and commit to doing better tomorrow. Though Emperor Marcus lived modestly, he avoided luxury, for indulgence breeds weakness. By practicing simplicity, he trained his mind to remain calm under deprivation. Modern application. Simplify your lifestyle, limit distractions, declutter, consume less. Stress often comes from excess. Too many possessions, too many commitments, too many choices. Marcus believed that humans exist for each other. When he felt overwhelmed, he reminded himself, what is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee. Modern application. Stress often narrows our focus on me. Expanding focus to helping others, colleagues, family, Community reduces stress by giving meaning to hardship. Marcus did not try to eliminate stress. He turned it into training. Each frustration was a chance to practice patience. Each loss, a chance to practice resilience. Each insult, a chance to practice dignity. This mindset transforms stress from an enemy into an ally. Instead of saying, "Why me?" say, "Here is my training." Morning. Set intentions. Write down what challenges you may face and how you will respond. Throughout the day, pause before reacting. Remind yourself what's in your control. Use the view from above to keep perspective. Evening, journal. Note victories, admit failures, and commit to improvement. Add to this physical discipline exercise, simplicity, mindfulness, focus on the present, and service helping others, and you recreate Marcus's Stoic rhythm of calm. Stress today may look different: emails instead of invasions, traffic instead of plagues, but the human mind is the same. Marcus teaches us that calm is not about controlling the world, but about controlling ourselves. His practices anticipated modern psychology. CBT reframing equals Stoic judgment control. Mindfulness meditation equals Stoic present focus. Resilience training equals Stoic negative visualization. That is why nearly 2,000 years later, his wisdom still works. Marcus never claimed to be perfect. His meditations are filled with reminders, corrections, even scoldings to himself. He was not a serene sage removed from life. He was a stressed human being who trained himself to endure with grace. We too can follow this path. We may not rule an empire, but we face our own battles, jobs, relationships, uncertainty, fear. Like Marcus, we can turn to philosophy as medicine for the mind. When stress arises, we can pause, reflect, and ask, what would Marcus do? And the answer is simple. He would control his mind. He would act with virtue. He would remain calm in the storm. That is how we too can deal with stress like Marcus Aurelius. Thanks for watching video. Please subscribe channel.